Why horror? What is it about the genre that attracts people to watching a film that is intended to scare them? And if it is the thrill of the scare that attracts people to the genre in the first place, then this question becomes more complicated, because not everybody is scared by the same thing. What might scare one person might not scare another person at all. I'm going to talk to two of my friends, Amanda and George, to find out what scares them about horror films, and what it is that attracts them to watching a horror film in the first place. Amanda, what is it about horror films that attract you to it? What is it that you enjoy or get out of watching a horror movie?
So, what really gets me are the moments of silence where you feel like you can't breathe, and then everything is just completely silent in the movie theater. And then leading up to that, there's like a sound, like that is a screeching sound or something. And I feel like a movie that did a really good job of that was The Others. Like, you'd be stuck in a closet and it would be completely silent and your heart would be pounding, but you can't breathe because you know that something is following you or knows that you're there. And then just that screeching sound when something does happen, it's really thrilling.
George, what is it about horror films that scares you? I remember you were telling me earlier that the Saw movies are ones that you thought were particularly scary of all the horror films you've seen.
Yeah, I guess, well, I really like psychological horror films, and I guess the Saw movies and other horror films that I at least kind of enjoy because they're my favorite movies ever, but I felt a lot of empathy or sympathy with the victims, like the characters who were, being tortured or, being kidnapped and whatnot. It's scary to me to think that just like regular person walking around could have something this horrible put upon them without their having done anything wrong or just being kind of random victims. And I guess to me that's scary. Also the fact that it's kind of a slasher movie. I think that a lot of what's fun in a horror film is just like the adrenaline rush that you get from, just being scared.
So I've talked to my two friends about what scares them when it comes to watching a horror film. And now I think it's only fitting that I talk about what scares me. And the best way to do that is to tell you what my top 3 choices are when it comes to the horror genre, or the best 3 horror movies that I've ever seen in my life. So I'll start with number 3, and each of these different films represents a different subcategory as described in the History of Horror PowerPoint presentation. So number 3 on my list is the Silence of the Lambs film, which is a psychological thriller. And a psychological horror film essentially is one where there is no superacting force, supernatural force in the movie, and it's really the psychological disorder of one character that is the center of the film. And so in this case, there's 2 characters in The Silence of the Lamb. There's Buffalo Bill and there's Hannibal Lecter. And the more interesting character, I think everybody would agree, is Hannibal Lecter, because he captivates the audience with his utter brilliance and yet utter insanity at the same time. My second film that I find to be the scariest of all time is The Exorcist. This is a film that falls into the genre of possession, where another person takes control over somebody else. In this case, the devil or a demon is taking control of this little girl. And there's nothing scarier than the thought of losing control over your own body and your own mind. And that's why this film scares me so much. And number 1 on my list, which I think is by far the scariest movie of all time, probably because I saw it when I was 4 to 5 years old for the first time, and it frightened me for the rest of my life because I thought my toys would come to life and kill me, and it is Child's Play. The original Chucky movie, the one that started the whole series. And if no one's ever watched it before and just thinks of The Bride of Chucky and The Seed of Chucky, those silly movies, this is not what the first one was about at all. The first one is a classic horror film done in the black magic subcategory, because essentially the plot line is that a serial killer, Charles Lee Ray, is about to die. He's being chased down by a police officer in the streets of Chicago, runs into a toy store, and finds a doll that he uses to essentially transfer his soul into, so that he has a way of remaining alive even though his human form is dying. And he uses black magic to do this. He essentially is taking voodoo that he learned from another person and transferring his soul into this body. And this child then begets this toy for his birthday, and that's where the whole film begins. And why I think this is such a great film is because there's such great development in the characters. And if I read a quote from Carol's reading, I think it describes very well what the film is about and how the interest is drawn into the film. So the quote from Carol's reading goes as this: "And even where there's information is given to the audience right off the bat, it is still generally the case that the human characters in the tale must undergo a process of discovering that the monster exists, which in turn may lead to a further process of confirming that discovery is an ensuing scene or a series of scenes." And what this means is that, importantly, not everybody knows right away, at least the characters in the film, that this man is really possessing this doll. Only the child knows, and it's the role of the mother to confirm this and then convince the police officer, another character, that this is in case what is happening. That is where the plot development thickens and where the story becomes interesting and you become attached to the characters. And on a little sub note, I saw just recently that they're making a remake of the original Child's Play film. And I definitely want to go see it because I would like to see how they change this classic story, this classic horror movie, and put it in a new perspective.